The rice had gone cold. Lin Yue sat at the small marble dining table, spine straight, hands folded neatly in her lap, as if she was still in the operating room and not in her own home, if it could be called that. Across from her, the second plate remained untouched. Steam had long stopped rising from the bowls of soup and stir-fried bok choy, now wilted in a sad pool of sauce. She had timed everything carefully. He always came home around 8:30. Not early, not late, just consistent enough for her to believe there was still some trace of structure in a marriage built on silence. At exactly 9:12 p.m., the lock clicked, the door opened. Her ears sharpened like they always did, not in hope, not anymore, just habit. She heard the soft rustle of his suit jacket being removed, followed by his voice, low and smooth. "I told you not to drink so much at lunch, Shenro. You always get flushed when you're tipsy." A soft laugh, warm. "I didn't say I didn't like it, I just said it was distracting." Yue's hand twitched slightly on the tablecloth. He didn't glance in her direction as he passed the dining room. His eyes remained fixed on the phone at his ear, smile lingering. The door to his study clicked shut behind him, sealing her out like an unwelcome echo. She looked down at the two plates again, the expensive bone china they'd received as a wedding gift, barely used. One fork untouched, one dinner eaten alone. She didn't touch her chopsticks for a long time. Then, as if completing a ritual, she picked them up, forced herself to chew through a few mouthfuls of bland rice and room-temperature vegetables. No salt. She'd forgotten. From behind the closed study door, she could still hear his voice now and then, muffled by distance but unmistakably soft. Softer than he'd ever been with her. She didn't listen. She just chewed. The ballroom shimmered with glass and gold, chandeliers casting soft light over silk gowns and black tie suits. A full quartet played something expensive and forgettable. The guests of Gu Group's annual charity gala drifted between champagne flutes and shallow flattery like well-dressed ghosts. Lin Yue stood by the far window, a glass of untouched white wine in her hand, her reflection faint against the city skyline. She had chosen the dress carefully, a midnight blue silk gown with a low back and folded neckline that traced the line of her collarbone like water. It had taken her 3 weeks to find it. Subtle, elegant, appropriate for the wife of a CEO. She hadn't worn blue in years, not since he said once absently that it made her look too serious. But tonight, she had needed something to feel like armor. The first ripple came in the form of a whisper behind her. Didn't Shenro wear that same dress in Milan last week? Another voice replied smug. She must have inspired the look. Yue didn't turn around. Her grip tightened slightly on the stem of her wine glass. Then she saw them, Gu Yanchen and Shenro, entering the ballroom from the opposite side. Shenro laughed too brightly, her manicured fingers resting lightly on his arm. Her gown, identical in cut, color, everything down to the stitching along the neckline, shimmered under the light. Except hers had been tailored. Shorter hem, more daring back. Subtle difference, but enough. The room shifted toward her, like iron filings to a magnet. A woman beside Yue leaned toward her date and whispered, "God, she's stunning." A man a few feet away chuckled, "Poor Mrs. Gu. Wrong fashion week, maybe." Yue's mouth didn't move. Her heart didn't race. She just watched. They came closer. Shenro smiled as if she hadn't noticed, then locked eyes with Yue as they passed. Her expression brightened, just a shade too much. She leaned in, her voice soft as spun sugar. "Oh no, we matched. Brave of you to still wear it." Yue's lips parted, but only slightly. Before she could answer, Gu Yanchen turned his head, finally seeming to notice her presence. He looked at her like one might look at a colleague's wife. Polite, distant, a nod. Then, without a word, his hand slid from Shenro's arm to her lower back, guiding her away into the crowd with casual familiarity. Yue stood in place for several long seconds. The music swelled, the servers passed with sparkling trays, people moved, buzzed, talked. And she stood there, holding a glass of wine she hadn't sipped, in a dress that no longer felt like hers. The operating room was silent, except for the beeping monitor and the ticking of the overhead light's rotation. Lin Yue's hands moved with mechanical precision, guiding the resident through a delicate valve replacement. Her tone was even, controlled. Clamp now, suture, clockwise. No, your other left. She didn't blink, not even when her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since the steamed bun she inhaled at 6 a.m. Now it was nearing 9. 12 hours and 3 surgeries later, she finally stepped into the staff corridor. Fluorescence buzzed overhead. She leaned against the wall and loosened her mask, head tilted back, eyes closed for just a moment. Dr. Lin, a young nurse, rushed up, breathless. "There's a family screaming in 12B. The patient, the elderly man from this morning, he didn't make it." Yue's spine straightened. She was already walking before the nurse finished speaking. The hallway smelled like disinfectant and grief. A woman, maybe 50, was sobbing against the wall, while a younger man pointed a shaking finger at Lin Yue. "You said he was stable," he shouted. "You said there was time." "No, I said he was critical and we were monitoring." "Don't twist your words now. Doctors like you always cover your own ass." Another voice behind her. "Where were you when he was coding? Getting your nails done?" Laughter from the waiting room, not kind. She didn't defend herself. She just bowed her head and said, "I'm sorry for your loss." Later, her supervisor pulled her into his office. "Lin, I'm not saying it was your fault, but maybe a softer bedside manner would help. People don't want logic when they're grieving. So I should lie? No, just smile more." Yue nodded, smiled. She walked to the stairwell after that. Not the break room, not the lounge, just the stairwell. Concrete, cold, quiet. She sat on the 4th step from the bottom, coat still on, and pressed her fingers against her temples. When she got home, it was past midnight. The lights were still on in the living room. Gu Yanchen sat on the edge of the couch, glass of whiskey in hand, shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He didn't say hello, just looked at her like she'd arrived late to something she didn't remember being invited to. "You're home." She toed off her shoes, fingers trembling slightly from fatigue. "Yes." He stood. "Come here." She didn't want to. She did anyway. Later, in the dark of their bedroom, his weight pressed over hers, impersonal, practiced, silent. No kiss, no gentleness, no words. Just hands that never lingered, eyes that never met hers. When it ended, he rolled off, turned away, and began scrolling through his phone, probably messages from Shenro. Yue lay still, legs curled toward her chest, eyes open in the dark. She felt nothing. That was worse than pain. The call came just after noon. She had just scrubbed out of surgery when her phone buzzed. A nurse from a private hospital on the other side of the city. "Dr. Lin, your mother-in-law collapsed during an event. Her blood pressure crashed. She's stable now, but she asked for you specifically." Yue didn't hesitate. She wiped her hands, signed off on her patient chart, and left her shift incomplete, something she'd never done in 6 years. She arrived in less than 30 minutes, still in scrubs, hair pulled back tight, no makeup, no pretense, just urgency. Madame Gu lay in a VIP suite, pale, clutching a hot water bottle. "Yue," she murmured weakly, opening her eyes. I don't want to see Ru." Yue's steps paused at that. Only a flicker. Then she moved to the bedside, gently checking the IV line, adjusting the blanket. "I'm here," she said softly. "You'll be all right." She stayed for hours, handled the discharge paperwork, argued with the physician about changing the medication dose, bought the older woman's favorite barley porridge herself, and made sure she drank it before leaving. She didn't call Gu Yanchen. She knew better. It was just after sunset when he arrived. The door opened with a soft click, and in walked her husband, flanked by Shenro, of course, dressed in soft pink, carrying a bouquet of peonies like she'd stepped off a drama set. "Auntie," Shenro chirped sweetly. "You scared us." She rushed forward with practiced concern, setting down the flowers and taking the older woman's hand. "Don't blame Yue," she added, flashing Yue a smile like a blade. "She did her best, but you know how busy she always is." Madame Gu blinked at the gesture, dazed. "Ru, you're so thoughtful." Gu Yanchen's eyes didn't land on Yue until the last possible second. "You should have called me," he said. Ro dropped her meeting for this. Yue opened her mouth, then closed it. She had been there for 6 hours. She had handled everything, while Shenro waltzed in with flowers and rewrote the entire story. "Yes," she murmured, "my mistake." As she gathered her things to leave, Madame Gu muttered something under her breath. "Yanchen, she always seems so cold. Even now, look at her face, no emotion. That's why I've always worried." Yue didn't stop walking, didn't even flinch. She just pressed the elevator button with steady fingers and stepped inside. The doors closed on Shenro's syrupy voice, Gu Yanchen's silence, and a hospital room full of misremembered truth. The hospital vending machine swallowed her last 10 yuan and spat out a bottle of lukewarm mineral water. Lin Yue sat on a concrete ledge just outside the staff exit. Her head throbbed, her stomach turned. She hadn't eaten in almost 20 hours. She had stopped registering hunger 5 years ago. Above her, the sun was bleeding out behind the rooftops, painting the sky in iron grey and dirty gold. She bent forward, pressing the cold bottle to her forehead. Behind her, the staff door creaked open. A nurse, young and overly cheerful, spotted her and smiled. "Dr. Lin, you look like death. You okay?" Yue offered a weak nod. "I'm fine." The nurse plopped down beside her, unwrapping a stick of gum. "You sure you're not pregnant or something? That's how I felt in my first month. Dizzy, no appetite, weird cravings. My husband thought I had a brain tumor." She laughed. Yue blinked. Pregnant? The word dropped into her mind like a slow stone. The nausea, the fatigue, the strange ache behind her knees. She had written it all off as stress, because that's what it always was, wasn't it? She stood abruptly. The nurse blinked. "I need to go," Yue said. The test sat on the counter like something alive. White plastic, cheap, unassuming. She stared at it for 5 full minutes before picking it up. Back in the staff restroom, she locked the door, sat down on the cold lid of the toilet, and forced herself to breathe. She took the test with steady, practiced hands, the same hands that had held beating hearts and severed arteries. She placed it on the tissue dispenser. 1 line, then 2. She didn't move. A minute passed, then 2, then 5. Her body didn't react. No tears, no smile, no fear, not even the illusion of choice. She had saved strangers, she had resuscitated the dead, she had endured silence, neglect, humiliation, and now, inside her, something had begun to grow, something that belonged to her, and to him, but she wouldn't tell him, not Gu Yanchen, not ever.